Hello everyone. Welcome back to our Fluent English podcast channel. Today we have another lesson that will help you improve your listening and speaking English skills. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It really helps us out and ensures you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Your support means a lot, and we appreciate every single one of you. Let's dig in. Buckle up. Have you ever been told to buckle up? Maybe you were in a car. But if someone tells you to buckle up, and you're not in a car, they're not talking about your seatbelt. They're telling you to get ready for something very difficult or challenging. When I was studying biology in college, at the start of the semester, my professor told me to buckle up, and I had to study so much for that course. It was so challenging. So he was telling me to prepare for a difficult semester. When someone is just talking, and you want them to get to the point, the main thing you need to know, you can say, cut to the chase. This idiom means get to the main point. Stop rambling on, but you need to be careful with this idiom because it can be a little direct and rude, especially if someone you know really cares about what they're talking about, and you just want them to get to the point. You just have to say, cut to the chase. Now, when you want to say someone has thought of all the details of something and hasn't forgotten anything, you can say they've thought of the whole 9 yards. This is a very strange phrase because, in the United States, we usually use measurements in tens. But, I guess, in this phrase, we say the whole 9 yards, and pretty much every native speaker will understand what you're talking about when you use this phrase. People in the United States sometimes go all out when planning weddings, so they think about where they want the wedding, how it will look, what food they'll serve, yes, what desserts. It's the whole 9 yards. It just means they think of every detail. Speaking of weddings, they can really cost an arm and a leg. This is a very old classic idiom, but it's still very common today. If you say something costs an arm and a leg, it means it's very, very expensive. A wedding can cost an arm and a leg. I'm an English teacher, but if you ask me if British people use this phrase often, I'll tell you, you're barking up the wrong tree. This phrase, barking up the wrong tree, means you're pursuing the wrong goal. You made a mistake thinking I know what British people typically say. But I've never been to the UK. I've only met a handful of British people in real life in the United States. Of course, I've seen many online, but I don't know what they say. So you're just barking up the wrong tree. So, when you make a mistake by asking the wrong person a question, you might be barking up the wrong tree. And of course, I think this idiom comes from the idea that dogs love to chase squirrels up trees. And if they're looking at the wrong tree, and the squirrel isn't there, they're barking up the wrong tree. They're trying to do the wrong thing. The most common idiom to say someone is sick in English is to say they are feeling under the weather. Or you could just say Kayla is under the weather today. It means she's sick, and yes, I'm talking about myself in the third person here. Of course, there are other idioms to say someone is sick, but this is the main one I want you to remember. And it's a very polite way to say someone is sick without getting into too many details, and usually, we only use this phrase if someone is going to be sick for just 1 or 2 days. They just have a small flu or a small cold. Now, if someone is very sick, maybe they have cancer or another disease. You would not use this idiom under the weather. You would just say, they have a disease or they have an illness. If you want to say something is very common and easy to get, you can describe it as a dime a dozen. I think of this idiom describing cards. People collect baseball cards, football cards, and Pokemon cards. There are many types of cards people collect. And the idea behind collecting these cards is you buy a pack, open it, and hope to get some kind of rare card, but usually, you just get the common cards that are a dime a dozen, so it's the idea that you can just buy, these cards, a dozen of them, 12 cards, for 10 cents, which is very inexpensive. So if you want to say something is generally very common, very cheap, very easy to find, you can say it's a dime a dozen. This idiom is very common in the United States, especially in TV shows and movies, but personally, I don't use it very often. So you should know what it is because you'll hear it often. The idiom is cat got your tongue? If you want to ask why someone is silent, or maybe you think they don't have an answer because they feel guilty, you might say, "Cat got your tongue?" And this is a very sassy way to say, "Why aren't you talking? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel bad?" So I think that's why you'll hear this in many TV shows and movies, because people act very dramatically in those situations. If you need to say that two people must be involved to solve a problem or create one, you can say it takes two to tango, and tango, of course, is a very popular dance that requires two people, and we use this idiom to say, something requires two people. I have two kids, and if they do something and get in trouble, and one says, "It wasn't me," I'll say, "It takes two to tango." It means it takes both of you to get in trouble together. You're both at fault. So you can also say this to someone if you need their help. If you need the other person's help, you might say, "Well, it takes two to tango. Come over here and help me." It's quite a fun phrase, and it's definitely used more informally. If you're very tough and like to work out and exercise at the gym, I think you'll like the next idiom or very common phrase. The phrase is "no pain, no gain." Meaning literally, when you work out, of course, you're going to feel pain after a very hard workout, maybe lifting very heavy weights, and your muscles need a few days to recover. If you have sore muscles and have pain, you'll probably gain a lot of muscle mass. This idiom can also be used in situations where it takes really hard work to accomplish something. Like you're writing a paper for school for a long time, you're working very hard. It's quite unpleasant, but no pain, no gain. It means if you don't work hard and make sacrifices, you won't have the results or, the success. When you want to say someone needs to face a fear by doing the thing they're afraid of, you should tell them to take the bull by the horns. It's the idea that literally, if you're afraid of a bull, it has horns on its head, and you might grab them and try to ride the bull. But this is obviously used very figuratively, very idiomatically. Let's say you're afraid of public speaking, but you sign up for a public speaking course. You're really taking the bull by the horns. You're facing your fears head on. This next phrase is so common. I use it all the time. When you're talking about someone, and they walk into the room, and you didn't expect them to walk in, and you want to say, "I was just talking about you." It's more common to say, "Oh, speak of the devil." Now you might find this a little rude, but it's just common here to say, "Speak of the devil." And I think the full phrase is "Speak of the devil, and he shall appear." So you're talking about this person, and they unexpectedly walk into the room. You can use this phrase if you want to say something is impossible to believe without seeing it with your own eyes. You can use the phrase "seeing is believing." I had a friend who had never been to New York City, and he said, "I don't think it would be that great to ride the subway every day. Like, I don't think it would work well." I could tell him, "Well, seeing is believing. Once you see it, you'll believe it because the public transportation in New York City is so much better than anywhere else in the United States. So if you go and see it for yourself, you'll understand what people are talking about." Instead of just telling someone to give up, you can say they should just throw in the towel. In boxing, if a fighter gets, too weak, and you can see they shouldn't fight anymore, your team or the coach will throw in a white towel. It means you forfeit or you surrender. So this phrase comes from that idea. If you give up on something, you might say, "Well, I'm just going to throw in the towel." When I was a kid, I really disliked playing basketball at first. The first couple of seasons, I was really terrible. I didn't enjoy it, and I just said, "I want to just throw in the towel." But my mom wouldn't let me quit mid-season, so I couldn't just throw in the towel. I had to keep going. But I actually really enjoyed basketball after that and played it for many more years, so I'm glad she didn't let me just throw in the towel. If someone is very stubborn and won't change their stance on an issue, or they don't easily change their mind, then you can say they are really putting their foot down about something. When my kids watch TV, I say, "Okay, after one episode, we turn the TV off, and I put my foot down about it." It means I'm going to be very firm, very stubborn on this issue. No more asking, "Hey, can we watch one more episode?" Because I think too much TV turns my kids into, I don't know, just kind of crazy kids, so I put my foot down about it. I'm very strict about it. In the United States, the Kansas City Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. When a sports team gets really good here, they become very popular, and many people start becoming fans or they jump on the bandwagon. This just means when something becomes popular, you become a fan of it, and typically, when someone in the United States is a fan of a team just because they're playing well, we call them a bandwagon fan, meaning they're not a real fan. They weren't a fan of the team when they were playing poorly. Only when they play well. And you can use this idiom, jump on the bandwagon, talking about other popular things, not just sports. If you're giving a presentation or giving a speech, and something happens in the audience, but you just ignore it and keep going, you could say you didn't miss a beat during your speech or presentation. We say this to someone when they just continue on without being distracted by anything. So usually we use this idiom as a compliment, like, even though there was a distraction, you didn't miss a beat, you just kept going. One of my favorite ways to say you're going to change direction or change your approach to something when you have a problem is to say, "Wow, you really flipped the script." Let's say you're a teacher, and you have a student in your class who is failing the subject. They're doing very poorly, and all of a sudden, they start studying. They start coming to class, asking lots of questions. You could tell that student, "Wow, you've really flipped the script, your grade is changing, and you're really trying now." So this idiom, flip the script, just means change your approach, change direction, or even just change your attitude. When you talk to engineers, they're very smart. They're very passionate about what they do. But sometimes when you talk to them, they can really just get into the weeds on a topic. And if you don't understand their type of engineering, let's say they're a computer engineer, well, you won't understand what they're talking about. And you'll say, "Okay, you're getting a little into the weeds." It means you're talking about really small technical details. And I don't need to know all that because I don't understand it. So if you want to tell someone to keep the conversation very general or, very understandable for you, you might say, "Hey, we don't need to get into the weeds here." If you are romantically interested in someone, we typically say, "That's your crush," and you're finally going to ask them out on a date or tell them you like them. You could say you're finally going to make a move. This idiom is used, for love and dating. But you can also use it just anytime you're finally going to do something. Take some kind of big action about something you've been meaning to do for a long time. You're finally going to make a move. Instead of telling someone to keep something in mind, which is also kind of an idiom, many people will say, "bear in mind." This is one of my husband's favorite phrases. He uses it all the time, so I have to teach it to you if you want to tell someone a story. But you also need them to remember a detail for the story to make sense. You'll use this phrase. Let me show you. Yesterday, I took my kids outside to play in the snow. Bear in mind, it was freezing cold, so I didn't stay out there very long. So instead of just telling you the story about playing outside with my kids in the snow, I need you to bear in mind or remember that it was very cold because it was quite miserable being outside. Even though my kids didn't care, they had so much fun. When you first learn English, of course, you just learn basic sentences, basic verbs, basic nouns, basic greetings. But down the road, you're going to need to know tons of new idioms and advanced phrases. So this phrase "down the road" means later on, in the future. It's very common to say, "Hey, down the road, you're going to need to do this." It means in the future, you'll need to do this. And it's kind of like driving, your future is ahead of you down the road. Before we had iPhones, of course, we just had regular cell phones, and some people only had landline phones. But once we got iPhones, it was a complete game changer for our entire lives. So this phrase, a game changer, it's used to describe something that either really positively impacts things or, creates a big problem for things. It's some kind of detail that changes things either for the better or for the worse. In the case of the iPhone, you could argue it was a positive game changer because now we can communicate so easily, but you could also say it's a negative game changer because people spend too much time on their smartphones. So use this phrase, game changer. It's a really good one. One thing I tell myself when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling, just sad or angry, but I need to just focus on what I'm doing. I say, get it together. get it together, Kayla. It means just, calm down, relax. You need to work. You need to get things done. So you have to be careful using this phrase with other people, because people can be very sensitive about their emotions. And you need to, of course, ask, are you okay? But when someone needs to just focus, get their work done, even though they're sad or stressed, you might say, hey, you need to get it together. It means, deal with your emotions, try to calm down. If you want to say something happened faster than you expected, or it happened, very quickly. You could say before you knew it or before you know it. So I always thought becoming a teacher would take so long. But before I knew it, I had my own classroom, and I had my own students, and then before I knew it, I was an online English teacher. So life just moves very quickly. It means even though things seem like they take a long time, time passes quickly, and before you know it, you're old. It's important when you make a deal with someone, especially if the deal seems really good for you, to ask, what's the catch? Or you could say, there has to be a catch. In this case, when we say there's a catch, it means there's something unexpected that's actually going to make the deal very difficult or very bad for you. And usually, it's something very hidden. Sometimes in the United States, you'll see really great deals advertised for brand new cars. But the catch is you'll have to pay high interest on the car loan. So the car will actually cost much more than you expected. There's always a catch when a deal seems too good. It means there's always something hidden you'll have to do that makes it more difficult. My favorite idiom to say two people or two things match very well together is to say they are like two peas in a pod. And this is usually only used for people. If you think, your friends who are boyfriend and girlfriend, they just get along so well, they're good friends. They have a good relationship. You could say, you two are just like two peas in a pod. It's just a very sweet phrase that means you get along very well. One thing that's very common on American television is house makeovers. They'll take someone's house or a room in a house that's quite ugly, quite plain, and they actually turn it into a beautiful new room. Then they reveal the new room to the person who owns the house, and the person says, oh, I can't believe my eyes. Or, they just say, I can't believe it, because it's so great. And also, you could use this phrase if something was really bad. Oh, I can't believe my eyes how bad this is. If you want to say this phrase to someone else, you'd say, can you believe your eyes? It means it's either very good or very bad. Of course, there's a lot of context with this phrase, but it's very common when something is, striking. You can't believe it. These next two phrases are very common to say you have two difficult choices, and you don't even want to choose between them. But you have to choose. The first phrase is to say, I'm between a rock and a hard place, and the second phrase is, I have to choose between two evils. Both of these phrases are very common when you have to make a choice, but you don't really want to choose either option. So maybe your mom and your girlfriend both want to hang out with you, and if you say no to your mom, you disappoint your girlfriend. And if you say no to your girlfriend, you disappoint your mom. So you could say, I'm between a rock and a hard place. You wouldn't really say, I have to choose between two evils, because in this case, both choices are acceptable, but you're just disappointing someone. If you have two bad choices that are going to have bad consequences for people, you have to say, I have to choose between two evils. When you want to say someone is telling a story, but they're not giving you many details, you can say, well, you're leaving a lot to the imagination here. It means you're not giving enough details, and I'm just imagining lots of crazy things. Now, if someone gives you too many details, you can either say that's TMI or too much information, or you can say that's not leaving much to the imagination here, so it just means you're giving too much personal information about a situation. Very often, people telling long stories, instead of saying, how it ended, they'll just say, well, and the rest is history. It means you can guess what happens in the story because, it's so well known. For example, in Cinderella, the prince and Cinderella get married, and the rest is history. It means they just lived happily ever after. I'm not going to tell you the rest of their lives because it would be a long and just boring story. So you hear this at the end of stories or at the end of movies in the United States. The rest is history. It means you can pretty much guess what happened. In the United States, there was a show on for a while about an Asian American family. They immigrated to the United States, and the show is called Fresh Off the Boat. Now, I feel like this could be quite offensive to say to someone like, "Oh, you're fresh off the boat." But I have heard people who immigrated to the United States say this in a joking manner, like, "Oh, I was fresh off the boat." It just means I just arrived in the United States or arrived anywhere. And I'm not acclimated yet. I'm not used to everything. I haven't learned the language yet. And of course, this phrase isn't literal. People don't arrive in the United States on boats very often anymore. Most people fly on airplanes, but it's just a funny, joking phrase used to say, "I arrived here, and I wasn't used to everything yet. I was very fresh, just off the boat." If you want to tell someone that something is impossible and not worth doing, you can say, "Don't even bother." It just means something is going to be too difficult or not worth the effort. So if you think you need to learn every single word in the English language, don't even bother because there are always going to be new words coming out. And there are so many words that even native speakers don't know. Some don't even bother. When you have a to-do list for the day, you probably want to just get it done quickly and knock it out. When you say you knocked out a task, it means you just got it done quickly and did it. So usually in the morning, I knock out making the bed. I knock out unloading the dishwasher. I try to knock out the annoying things I don't want to do later. Often in the United States, companies will ask, "How did you hear about us? How did you know to come into our store?" Or "How did you know about our service?" And, they'll say, "Did you hear about us from an ad? Did you hear about us from social media?" You can say, "No, just word of mouth." It means maybe you heard someone talking about them, or a friend told you about the store or the service. So the phrase word of mouth means you didn't hear about it anywhere formally or in writing. Just someone told you. This phrase can be a little confusing when you hear it for the first time. When someone says it's go time, it just means it's time to start. Let's get ready. Let's get motivated. It's go time. And this phrase is especially used in movies, when, at the end they have the big plan. Maybe they're going to do something or save someone, and everyone's ready. They'll say, "Okay, it's go time, let's go." When you ask someone a question, and they know the answer, and you want to ask them an extra question, it's kind of like, you're testing their knowledge. It doesn't have to be a formal test. It doesn't have to be a teacher saying this. We say, "Oh, you know this?" Bonus points if you can answer this question. Bonus points just means, like, you don't have to know this, but it would be cool if you did. It's really common to say, this is common in actual game shows and actual trivia, but we also just see it in our normal everyday conversations. Bonus points if you know where this was made. It's kind of saying this is a fun fact. It's not absolutely necessary to know. A funny phrase I hear quite often is to say someone had white knuckles. So if someone is scared, especially if they're on a roller coaster or in a fast car, they might grip their seat or their chair, and they might white knuckle it. We use it as a verb. It just means they're holding on very tight because they're scared they're going to fly out or crash the car. One thing I'm really proud of in my life is having a clean house. I always try to keep things clean and tidy so that, it doesn't feel cluttered or messy. But it's a lot of work. Cleaning your house and keeping it clean. So sometimes I have to swallow my pride and ask for help around the house. I ask my kids to clean up after themselves. I ask my husband to help me with certain tasks. I feel like it's my pride. But I have to ask for help because I can't do everything myself, and I feel like this phrase, swallow my pride, is very common, and you should also have a good understanding of what it means. When you're learning a language, sometimes you feel like you don't want to ask what that means, but you have to swallow your pride and ask so you can learn the phrase or the new word, and you can understand what's being said. But sometimes it feels embarrassing or difficult to ask for help, but it's important just to swallow your pride. Say it's okay if I don't know, and ask for help. When a situation starts to get chaotic, you can say it's going off the rails. Imagine a train that's, about to break. It goes off the rails. That's called derailing. But if you want to just talk about a situation in life that's starting to get chaotic or crazy, you can say, it's going off the rails, when someone asks you a question like, can I use your pen, in English? You can politely respond by saying yes, or sure, or certainly. Or you can use the next idiom. You can say, by all means. This idiom is just used to give someone permission in a very polite way. By all means, yes, of course. So it's not, you don't have to always say this phrase, but it's just polite, and you'll hear it often used to say, of course, yes, you can do that. You have permission. In my opinion, there are two types of people in this world. There are those who, when they travel, pack everything but the kitchen sink. And there are those who travel light. So these are both idioms. But the idiom I'm going to teach you is to travel light. When someone travels light, it means they only bring the necessary items, they don't pack too many clothes, or they don't pack unnecessary items. People who travel light often only have one backpack when they fly on an airplane. But people who pack everything on a trip probably have a really big suitcase, a backpack, a purse, lots of different things. Personally, I try to travel light, but it's not always easy. This next phrase is used quite sarcastically in English, so if you want to tell someone they think too highly of another person, you might say, it's like you worship the ground that they walk on, so you're saying, this person isn't that great? You're like worshiping. You think they're a god. And of course, this phrase isn't literal, it's just an idiom. But it's used to say, you think highly of someone. Or if you're a big fan of, say, Lady Gaga, you might say, I worship the ground Lady Gaga walks on. And of course, that's a very dramatic way to use the phrase, but you get the idea. In the United States, there's an actual baseball Hall of Fame. It's a place you can go in Cooperstown. And you can go see pictures of really great baseball players and all kinds of artifacts, like baseball bats and baseballs. And it's called the Hall of Fame. It's used to showcase the best players in the sport. So this phrase is used in other situations besides literal halls of fame. It's used to say something is really good or it's the best. Another phrase that's really great to use when you want to describe something as excellent or the best is to say it's world class. In the United States, Chicago is known as a world-class city. They have some of the best restaurants, some of the best museums, and some of the best sports teams, so it's known as a world-class city in many different countries. You might say, we have something that's world-class. It could be a certain type of food, a certain type of dessert, or a certain type of university, whatever it is. These last few idioms in this English lesson relate to gambling, cards, money. The first one is hit the jackpot. If you say you hit the jackpot, it means something very lucky happened to you. Something very big happened to you. If you married a really great person, you could say, I really hit the jackpot with my wife or with my husband. If you want to say someone is risking everything for something, you can say they bet the house. This phrase means you use all your money to make a bet on something because you're almost certain it's going to happen. A similar phrase is to say, I'm going to bank on it, and I use this phrase all the time. If you're going to spend the whole day outside, you might say, I'm banking on the weather being really nice today. It means you're pretty sure it's not going to rain. It's not going to be cloudy. You're banking on the weather being good, you're very certain it's going to happen, and you're relying on it. And if you want to say something is likely to happen, you can say, I think it's in the cards. Now, conversely, you can say, this is not in the cards for today. So if someone asks, hey, do you think we can go out to dinner tonight? You might say, I'm really tired. I just don't think that's in the cards for me today. It means it's probably not going to happen. This first phrase is very funny to me. The phrase is pickup line. A pickup line is a sentence you use to start a conversation with someone you find attractive or you're romantically interested in. Now, it's very bold to use a pickup line, so there are many cheesy, meaning kind of overused, funny pickup lines we have in English. One is, "Did it hurt when you fell?" And the person will say, "What? What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Did it hurt when you fell from heaven because you're so beautiful like an angel?" That's an example of an extremely cheesy pickup line. But you could say, "Hey, I really like your hair." That can also be a pickup line. So we use this phrase pickup line when we talk about the first thing someone says in a conversation to try to start a conversation, possibly flirt, or ask someone out on a date. If you want to describe someone who is very hyperactive, who has a lot of energy, or maybe they're just very anxious and can't sit still, you can say they are bouncing off the wall. I celebrate Christmas. So the main example that comes to mind when I think of this phrase, bouncing off the wall, is Christmas morning. My kids come downstairs, and they have tons of presents and usually lots of treats and candy. And they are just bouncing off the walls. They're so excited, they can't sit still, and they're usually literally bouncing, jumping on couches, whatever. So if someone is extremely excited or happy, they are bouncing off the walls. This next phrase is extremely useful in your daily conversations. When you want to tell someone they shouldn't worry about something, because maybe you took responsibility, or maybe you did them a favor and you don't want them to feel like they have to pay you back. You can say, "Don't sweat it." So maybe if you do something for a coworker at work, and they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't get this done." You can say, "Hey, I can send this out for you. Don't sweat it." It means, don't worry about it. Don't let it bother you. It's no problem for me. So it's a very informal, very friendly English phrase, don't sweat it. This next phrase reminds me of a time in college. I was at a party, and there were two guys dancing, and one was trying to dance, and the other was trying to show off and dance too. They were going tit for tat. This is kind of a funny phrase too, but you'll often hear people say this phrase when two people are trying to match each other. They're trying to match each other's energy, or be kind of competitive. In baseball, which is a very popular sport here in the United States and in Japan, actually, you'll often find the pitchers in each inning will go tit for tat. So one pitcher has a really good inning, and then the other pitcher, because, they're trying to win the game. They'll go tit for tat and also have a good inning, so that's a good sports example of going tit for tat. It means, you're trying to match each other's effort. This next phrase is used especially if you're adding a little bit of sass to the conversation. When you want to say someone is capable of doing something, especially if it's something negative. Or maybe they're lying about something, and someone says, "I don't think they would do that," you might say, "Well, I do. I wouldn't put it past them." So the phrase "I wouldn't put it past them" means I don't doubt they would do something bad, or that they would even lie. In the United States, health insurance is kind of a mess. We all pay a lot of money to have health insurance so we can go to the doctor. Now, even if you have health insurance in the United States, it's never guaranteed that they will pay for your medical treatment, however wrong that seems. So I wouldn't put it past the health insurance companies to deny your medical claim. It means, I wouldn't doubt it. Even if you think you're covered, and you think you did everything right, you still get a huge bill after going to the doctor in the United States. I wouldn't put it past the insurance companies. A good phrase you can use when something is finished or completed is to say, "It's a wrap." It means it's all done. I think traditionally, this phrase is used after, on the set of a TV show or a movie, they finished filming the movie or the TV show. And everyone's done for the day, they'll say, "It's a wrap," but we say this in our everyday English speech too. So when you finish a project at work, and everyone asks, "Is there anything else to do?" And you can say, "It's a wrap, we're all finished." One thing you might not know about me is that when I was younger, I was a pretty good soccer player, and one time, even though I was a good player and worked hard, I didn't make the soccer team, and you know what? I thought it's just politics. This phrase, "it's just politics." It means even though you were good enough, or even though something should have happened, politics got in the way. Another good example that comes to mind for this phrase is when you should get a promotion at work. Maybe you think you're the most competent worker. You work harder than everyone else, you're never late. Someone else might get the promotion because, the boss likes them. Or maybe they're even related to the boss. So it feels like it's just politics. You're kind of making an excuse for why you didn't get the promotion, or why something that should have happened didn't happen. Because politics are at play, and politics usually describe, like, the president and all the politicians who make laws in the country, but we also just say, like, politics, the important people. So it could be in a company, an organization, or in my first example, I was trying out for a soccer team, there were coaches and parents, some friends. And it was just politics. I didn't make the team. I almost want to sing to you for the next English phrase. The phrase is let it go. If you have young children. Or maybe if you're just a Disney fan, you've probably seen the movie Frozen, and she sings Let It Go. This English phrase is actually quite popular in our normal conversations too. If you say let it go, it means let the problem go. Don't worry about it, don't think about it too much, and don't make it a big deal. The opposite of letting something go is to hold a grudge, meaning you're resentful towards someone or trying to punish them further, even after, if they caused you a problem or were rude to you or whatever. Back to sports. If you've ever seen a sports game where a player gets very angry and starts yelling at the referee about, maybe a bad call or they think something else should have happened, and they get ejected from the game, well, they should have just let it go. They should have just walked away, let the problem go, and continued playing. And then they wouldn't have gotten ejected from the game, and they could have helped their team more. So if you want to tell someone not to worry about a problem or not to hold a grudge anymore, you can say, just let it go. Don't worry about it. When I was in school, I was terrible at math, and today I couldn't solve a calculus problem not even if I tried. So the phrase, not even if I tried, is what we'll learn today. The phrase, not even if I tried, means even if you are willing to try and put effort towards solving a problem or doing something, you just couldn't do it because you don't have the skill or the problem is too difficult. There's a pizza place near me that has this challenge where you have to eat a pizza. It's probably this big. It's the size of my arms, and you have to do it in 30 minutes. And if you eat the whole pizza, you get your picture on the wall. I know it sounds really weird. But these eating challenges are very common here in the United States. Let me know if you've ever seen something like this in your country, on TV, or anywhere. But I couldn't eat the pizza, not even if I tried. It means even if I wanted to. I don't think my stomach is big enough to eat it, especially in 30 minutes. A great phrase to describe someone very difficult to work with is to say they are a piece of work. This phrase is also considered kind of rude, so be very careful how you use it. So you might hear someone say that person is a piece of work. It means they're very difficult to work with. They cause a lot of problems. Let me give you an example. At one job I had a coworker who was late for work every day. They didn't dress very well, everyone was supposed to dress nicely at the office, and this person did not follow the dress code. And really, this coworker looked like they just rolled out of bed, and they were very lazy when it came to helping out around the office. So they were just difficult to deal with, a piece of work. And actually, it wasn't too long before they got fired from the job because they just weren't doing enough work. If you live in the United States, you probably see Amazon drivers driving around all the time delivering packages. If you didn't already know, Amazon started as just an online bookstore, so you could just buy books online from Amazon. But what I think really put Amazon on the map was the fact that they offer 2-day shipping. This phrase, to put someone or something on the map, means there's an accomplishment or some kind of event that makes the person stand out, either makes them famous or makes them very successful. So as a company, the fact that they were able to deliver things, not even just books, in 2 days was super convenient for people, and the company just took off here in the United States. And so many people order things from Amazon, including myself. It's very convenient to get something in just 2 days, and now often you can even get things in 1 day or even later that day delivered right to your house. It's so convenient. I hope you've never done what the next phrase talks about. The phrase is to shoot yourself in the foot. Literally, obviously, this would mean you shoot yourself in the foot to injure yourself. I mean, that would be terrible. But we use this phrase figuratively in the United States to mean you do something that negatively impacts yourself. For example, if you don't study for a test, and you go into the test and fail, you really shot yourself in the foot by not putting in the effort. You weren't prepared for the test. But maybe you thought, well, I actually know a lot about this test. I did really well in class. I'll do fine. I won't study. That's still shooting yourself in the foot. Often we use this phrase, shoot yourself in the foot, when you do something that unintentionally harms yourself later on. Speaking of feet, the next phrase is to take steps in the right direction. Often in English, we talk about steps being actions you can take to achieve a goal or move towards something positive. So if we say, hey, you're taking steps in the right direction, it means your actions now are going to help you later achieve your goal. We often say this phrase to someone when they're getting a little discouraged by working hard but not feeling like they're making much progress. You can say, well, at least you're taking steps in the right direction. So maybe if someone's trying to lose weight, they might say, oh, I worked out this week, and I ate healthy, but I only lost 1 pound. And you might say, well, at least you're taking steps in the right direction. It means all those healthy habits will eventually help you lose weight in the future. A phrase that reminds me of Game of Thrones is the phrase up for grabs. This phrase means anyone has the chance to claim something. So you might make a dessert, maybe cookies or cupcakes, and there's one left over. You might say, hey, the last one is up for grabs. If anyone wants more dessert. It means no one has claimed it. But anyone could take it. In Game of Thrones, the whole point of the show was, there's someone trying to be the ruler or the king or queen of all the kingdoms. The throne was sometimes up for grabs, meaning it seemed like anyone could claim it, and everyone was trying to claim the throne. It's important to know this phrase if you're trying to be a good friend. When someone is describing a really painful or sad situation in their life, you can say, I feel your pain. It just means I sympathize with you or I can understand why you're so sad. Now, if someone is describing a really sad situation that's very specific to them, you wouldn't use this phrase. But you can also use this phrase when someone says they're very annoyed or mad at someone. They might say, I have so much work this weekend, I can't believe it. I don't want to work this weekend. You could say, oh, I feel your pain. I have to work this weekend too. It means I understand why you're so annoyed. This next phrase, I hope you never have to use it. When someone does something very negative or wrong to you, you can say you got burned. If someone ever sold you a product, and it didn't work very well, but you can't get your money back, you might say, I got burned. It means, I got screwed over or I suffered something very negative because of what this person told me or sold me. Another romantic phrase I think you should know if you're learning English is to get down on one knee. In the United States, when someone proposes, typically the man asks the woman to marry him. That's the traditional way. Here, they will get down on one knee. They don't necessarily always do this. It depends on your relationship and how traditional you are, but this is the traditional way to ask someone to marry you. So we use this phrase to ask if someone proposed. We might say, did he get down on one knee? Or, did you finally get down on one knee? It just means they proposed. It's totally equivalent here in English. Have you ever seen the video of the girl twerking or dancing in her apartment? And then she fell over, hit a candle, and everything caught on fire. This video went absolutely viral. Millions of people watched it. They thought it was real. They were so shocked. But it turns out we all got played. It means we all got tricked or deceived by this video because it was actually a stunt woman or someone who professionally performs stunts or dangerous things. And the show here in the United States. Jimmy Kimmel's show made this video to see if they could make it go viral and trick everyone on the internet, so we all got played by this video. Even me. I totally thought it was real when I first saw it. If you want to say someone put an extra effort or went out of their way to help you, you can say they went out of their way. So, to go out of your way means to help someone by doing something special for them. Maybe you did something special for someone, and they didn't even thank you. You could say, I went out of my way to help you, and you didn't even say thank you. You know, it would obviously mean I put in all this effort, and you're very ungrateful. So you can use this phrase, go out of your way, very often in English to mean you put in extra effort to help someone. Recently, I had a home project. I painted my bathroom. It was yellow, and although I like the color yellow, I think it looks terrible on walls. And I just painted my bathroom white. And I was very excited about this home project. And I told my husband, this is really going to knock your socks off, it's going to look really good. And he wasn't that impressed. Honestly, I think men just don't notice small details like wall color. But I used this phrase, knock your socks off, to mean it's going to impress you. It's going to greatly impress you. So next time you want to say something was, you know, really impressive, you thought it was great. You thought the person did an excellent job. You can say, you knocked my socks off. It's kind of a funny old phrase, but I would still say it's quite common, and everyone understands it here in the United States. A phrase that means something is very secure and protected is to say it's locked down. Another interesting way this phrase is used is when someone is in a very committed relationship. Maybe they even just got married. You might say, well, they're locked down, and it means they're very committed to each other. A more common way this phrase is used is to say a deal is finalized. So if you're making a business deal, you might say, we have this deal locked down. Everyone just needs to sign the papers. It means everything is secure. Everything is done, there will be no changes. It's locked down. In English, a skirt, of course, is a piece of clothing women typically wear. But you can also use this noun as a verb to skirt something. If you skirt something, it means you avoid a very unpleasant situation or just a responsibility in general. So often I will skirt cooking dinner by just ordering takeout food and bringing it home for my family, so the responsibility I have is to cook dinner, but I skirted it by just getting takeout. This phrase can also be used when you just avoid a person or avoid being seen. You say, I skirted around. I didn't want to be seen. A very common way to say you were surprised or very confused by something is to say you were thrown for a loop. So to throw someone for a loop means you surprise them or confuse them. If you were going to get married and have a wedding, and on the day of the wedding, someone in your family you're very close with texts you and says, hey, I'm not coming to your wedding. That would really throw you for a loop. It means you would be very confused, and actually, you'd probably be very upset about it. So to throw someone for a loop means to give them some kind of information that confuses them, and they wonder why you're doing it. This next phrase my son actually brought to me the other day. He said, I was outside running up a storm, and I just thought it was so funny he used this idiom just because he's very young, and I don't often hear him use phrases like this, but he must have picked it up from some adult in his life. Okay, so when you say, doing something up a storm, I'll explain it a little better in a moment. Here, it means you do something with great energy and intensity. So you might say, I'm cleaning up a storm right now. It means you're cleaning your whole house. You're making everything super clean and shiny. Or like my son said, he was running up a storm outside, he was running all over the place. He had lots of energy, and he was doing it with great intensity. You could tell someone, well, you're really riding up a storm right now, or you're reading up a storm right now. It just means they're doing these things very quickly, with lots of energy. Have you ever heard the phrase up to speed? This phrase means you give someone knowledge or information so they're part of the situation or know what's going on. So if you call a friend you haven't talked to in a long time, they'll often get you up to speed on all the things in their life. They'll tell you all the gossip and all the different things that have been happening. They get you up to speed. We can also say catch you up to speed. It just means bringing you up to the information or knowledge you need to be part of the conversation, or if you're in a workplace, to help you know what to do at work. A really, really common phrase in English conversation is to say, what a nightmare. As you can probably guess, this phrase means something sounds terrible. Sounds really bad. sounds almost so bad that it would be a nightmare instead of reality. A nightmare is a bad dream. If you didn't already know, in the United States, when you have to get a new ID or driver's license, it is such a nightmare going to the office to get it because you need, obviously, so many documents. And I think here we're very strict about what document is acceptable versus what isn't. And it's a nightmare, honestly. A good phrase you can use when you want to say someone needs to limit or control something is to rein something in. Now, if you spend a lot of money, you might need to rein in your spending. And this is spelled differently than whether rein. So pay close attention to the words on the screen. If you have a shopping problem, you need to rein in your spending. If you have a drinking problem, you need to rein in your drinking. It just means you need to limit it or control it. This first phrase is very common among English learners. The phrase is no matter what. When you want to say you're very committed to an idea, you're very committed to doing something. You're very committed to liking something or disliking something. You can say you'll do it no matter what, right? Okay, so I've watched the movie The Sound of Music so many times in my life, maybe 100 times. I often watch it around the holidays. It's always on TV during the holidays, so even though I've seen it 100 times, no matter what, I will always still enjoy that movie, just because it's such a classic and so heartwarming. If you're very committed to waking up early in the morning, you might say, I will wake up at 7 a.m. no matter what. Nothing can stop you. It means even if you're very tired and stayed up too late, you're going to be very committed to waking up early. If you're very committed to a goal or a dream you have, you might say, I will finish college no matter what. It means nothing can stop you from achieving your goal of finishing college, even if it's hard, even if you want to quit, you'll do it no matter what. If you want to say someone really knows what they're talking about, they're very knowledgeable. They've studied something for a long time. You can say, you really know what you're talking about. This is an informal compliment, so don't use it in a very formal context. But if you're impressed by someone's knowledge, you can use this phrase. So ophthalmologists, they really know what they're talking about when it comes to eyes. Ophthalmologist, this word in English means an eye doctor, someone who studied the eye, who does surgery on the eye, who can help you with any medical eye problems. Of course, they really know what they're talking about when it comes to eyes. If you want to assure someone that someone else is knowledgeable, you might say, they really know what they're talking about. If you've ever had a friend talking about a movie or a TV show you haven't seen, and they're just saying how good it is, and you say, yeah, you've got me there, I really need to watch it. This phrase, you've got me there, means they make a very valid point. And this phrase is used when they're saying something you should do, or they're saying you're wrong about something. You might say, yeah, you've got me there. So if you use this phrase, you're just acknowledging they have a good point or a good idea, or they're giving you good advice you should follow. So your friend might be saying, you haven't seen Game of Thrones. It's such a good show. Everyone's watched it. I can't believe you missed it. And you might say, well, you've got me there. Maybe I should watch it. If you want to tell someone they have good style, meaning they dress really well or they make really good choices when it comes to music or food or the style of their house, you can use this phrase. They have good taste. Someone's taste can mean, the things they eat, but it can also mean their preferences, the things they like. It's the same as saying their style. A funny way to use this phrase is if you see someone out in public, and they're dressed just like you, or you happen to have the same shirt or same shoes on, you might say, oh, I like your shoes. You have good taste. And they might laugh because they realize you match or you have the same thing. Maybe you know someone who always recommends a good movie, a good TV show, or good music to you. You could say, I always ask for your recommendations because you have good taste or you have great taste. It means you like their opinions about music, movies, and TV shows. One phrase that is incredibly popular in TV shows, movies, and especially books, is in the blink of an eye. When you say in the blink of an eye, it usually means something changes from one thing to another very quickly, or it just feels like it happens so fast. So if you're not careful when you're walking near traffic, in the blink of an eye, you could get seriously hurt. Of course, you should be careful when you cross the street and look both ways. Or if you're texting while driving, in the blink of an eye, you could get in an accident. It means you need to pay attention to the road because an accident could happen that fast. If you look down at your phone while driving, which, of course, you should never do. You can also use this phrase in a positive way. So if something good happened to you very quickly, you could say, in the blink of an eye. I got promoted to manager after only working at the company for a few months. So even though a few months isn't usually a short period of time, it might feel short because you got promoted to manager so quickly. You'll hear this phrase a lot in the media, so keep an eye out for it. This next English phrase is extremely useful. You can use it in kind of two ways. The first way is you can say you're going to drop a bomb somewhere. And of course, this is idiomatic. So no literal bomb or explosive is being dropped, but your words that you say to someone are going to be so heavy or they're going to be, you know, very sad news or very dramatic news that it's like dropping a bomb on someone. One example that comes to mind is if you've ever traveled on an airplane, and you actually need to make sure you bring your passport, and maybe you're traveling with a group of friends, and you get to the airport and realize you forgot your passport. Now you have to tell your friends. You might say, well, sorry to drop this bomb on you guys, but I forgot my passport, so that would be terrible news because now the trip might be ruined. You might not be able to go get your passport in time to make the airplane or the flight. Another way this phrase is used is you can say you're going to drop a truth bomb. Meaning you're going to bring attention to a fact or some kind of knowledge that everyone kind of knows about, but it's really devastating. And everyone tries to ignore it. But you're going to drop the truth bomb, you're going to tell everyone. So for example, you could say, I'm going to drop a truth bomb on you guys and tell you that global warming is going to affect our planet and ruin it if we don't start changing our habits. So that's pretty devastating news. It's news we kind of already know about. But you're dropping the truth bomb. You're letting everyone know, and you're telling everyone to change their habits. The phrase along the lines of is incredibly useful in everyday conversation. You'll hear native speakers use it all the time. If you want to say you have an idea or just a general concept of something you want to do or something you want to have, you can use this phrase along the lines of, so someone might ask, what are you going to make for dinner tonight? And you might say, well, I was thinking something along the lines of meat and vegetables. It means you don't know the exact recipe you're going to use, and maybe you'll make chicken. Maybe beef, maybe corn, maybe carrots. But something along the lines of just meat and vegetables, you'll probably vary those two things. If you only have an idea of what you want to do, along the lines of, or if you're like me, you never know what you're going to do on the weekend. So someone might ask you, what are your plans for the weekend? And you might say, well, I was thinking something along the lines of going for a long walk and visiting some kind of park. So you're just speaking very generally, you're speaking very vaguely, and you're not sure exactly what you're going to do, but you kind of know what you want to do, along the lines of something. One important thing, if you ever work in sales, is to be persistent but not too pushy. This adjective pushy means you're too persistent and trying to force someone to buy something or do something, and they don't like it, so this adjective pushy comes from the phrase to push something on someone. When you push something on someone else, it means you force them to do it, or force them to take it or have it, or force them to accept a service they might not have wanted to accept. So for example, some people will push food and drinks on you when you come over to their house. They'll say, have another drink. No, I insist, come on, come on, come on. Or they'll say, of course, you need to eat some of this food. I insist, even if you say, I'm full, I don't want anything. They will push food on you. Maybe you want to offer someone something. Maybe you want to offer them help or a gift or something, but you're not sure if they want to accept it, so they'll say, I don't want to push this on you, but if you wanted, I could help you on Saturday or whatever it is. So, to push something means to assert something or force someone to accept something. But if you use it in the sense of saying, I don't want to do this, it just means you don't want to be pushy. You're trying to be polite. You're letting the person know they don't have to accept whatever it is you're asking or saying, and your feelings won't be hurt if you say, I don't want to push this on you. Some people say we're living at the peak of human existence right now. It means out of all the time humans have existed, this is the greatest time to be alive, but it might get worse after this. I don't know if that's true, but it's just the first example that came to mind when I was teaching this phrase to peak. When something peaks. Typically, a peak in English means the top of a mountain, the very, very top. Now, when we talk about someone peaking in life, it means their life is really good. They've reached really high points, very successful, but if we say they're peaking, it means they're not going to get any better. They're only going to get worse. When you say something peaked, you might say it got as good as it possibly could, but it's not going to get any better. It's probably going to get worse. You might hear in the media someone say they peaked in popularity. So I think of music like Harry Styles, pop music. You know, a year ago, his music was very popular, and it probably peaked. I don't know if it will be as popular in the future, but I could be wrong. Some people say it's not good to peak in life when you're young, even though it feels like you want to be popular. When you're young with your friends, and you want to be very cool, it's actually better to peak as an adult because then your life gets better instead of just getting worse. After childhood. Have you ever listened to music, and at first, you didn't really like it, or you thought it was okay, but you didn't imagine listening to it much? But then you grew to like it. It became your favorite music. Well, that's the next phrase, to grow to like something or to grow to dislike something. These phrases mean you change your opinion over time. So maybe at the beginning, you slightly liked something, but the more you do it, or the more you're exposed to it, you grow to like it, meaning you like it very much. When I first heard Bad Bunny's music, I thought it was okay. I didn't imagine listening to it much, but then I started listening to the album every day, and I really grew to like Bad Bunny and his music. The next phrase I'm going to teach you is to dangle something. Literally, to dangle something would mean to hold it in front of a person or an animal to try to get them. You know, to come towards you or do a trick or something, but we often use this metaphorically or idiomatically. So you could say, I dangled candy, or I dangled a reward in front of my child to get them to clean their room. It doesn't mean you're literally holding it, but you were saying, hey, if you clean your room, you'll get a treat later, so you can use it that way. Or adults are sometimes dangled things to get them to work harder. For example, your boss might say, hey, you'll get a raise at the end of the year if you do all this work and finish all these things. And if you stay late every day. So they're asking a lot of you, but they're promising something that isn't guaranteed, but they're kind of dangling it in front of you. And often when this happens, I feel like people are lying, like, they're saying, oh, this is going to be so great. You just have to work really hard for it. They dangled a reward in front of you. They try to get you to work harder. This next phrase is incredibly common among native English speakers, and I think it's so natural to say that we often don't notice we're using this phrase. The phrase is in retrospect. This phrase is very simple to use. If you want to say you're reflecting on something that happened in the past, knowing what you know now in the present, you might say, well, in retrospect, I would have done this instead. So, for example, in retrospect, many people would have invested in companies like Apple 30 years ago, knowing what they know now. And now they would be millionaires because they would have made so much money. You can use this in your personal life too. You could say, in retrospect, I would have dressed warmer, or if I knew it was going to be so cold today. So it means you got up in the morning, got dressed, not knowing what the weather would be like later in the day. In informal English conversation, you might use the phrase bring in the big bucks. If you want to talk about someone earning a lot of money, like lots and lots of money, use this phrase. It's quite fun. So for example, at first, Ed Sheeran, I just watched the Ed Sheeran documentary. I thought it was quite good. He would just perform on the street. He would do what we call busking. He would ask for money for just playing his guitar and singing on the street. But he wasn't bringing in the big bucks yet. It means he wasn't earning very well yet. Now he sells out stadiums with thousands of people, so he really brings in the big bucks as an international pop star. When you want to say something or an event had attention drawn to it, you can say it came into the spotlight. A literal spotlight would mean shining a light on something on a stage so everyone looks at it. But if you use this phrase idiomatically, you're saying something drew attention to an important issue or to a person. Recently, there was a tragic submersible accident. The 𝐾𝐦𝐿 submersible, but it really brought attention to how dangerous the ocean actually can be. I didn't know anything about submarines or diving to see the Titanic until this accident happened. So it really brought the dangers of the ocean into the spotlight. It means all the media and all the news was focused on this event. This next phrase can be used in a very sassy way when you want to say someone is acting so bold, so hypocritical, they're being too assertive. You might say, wow, the audacity. If you say someone is audacious, that's the adjective, meaning the person is willing to take risks. But usually, this can be used positively to describe someone, but if you say, I can't believe the audacity of that person, it's used negatively. You're saying they have no right to be that bold or that assertive. So, for example, if you have a boss who is late for work every day, and then they come in late and say, wow, you need to get work done, or you need to not take such a long lunch break. You could say, the audacity to tell me that when you yourself are late every day. So you're saying it's kind of hypocritical. It's kind of bold of them to say something bad about your actions when their actions aren't perfect either. Another example that comes to mind is if your parents comment on something you don't think they have a right to comment on because they're not perfect either. You could say, you have the audacity to talk about my finances, or you have the audacity to talk about where I live. Whatever it is. You're just saying they're being too bold, and they should stay out of your business. When you want to describe someone who is very sad and looks very helpless, you can use the phrase they look like a sad puppy. Whenever I watch a championship sports game, the losing team after the game always looks like sad puppies. It means they always look so sad and defeated, just like a puppy would look if it were sad, because you say, oh, I feel so bad for them. So you're kind of saying you sympathize with someone if they look like a sad puppy. You might hear this phrase in TV shows or movies as well. This next English phrase is so common, so pay close attention. If you want to say something is going to be mentioned or talked about, you can say it's going to be brought up. So, to bring something up means to mention it or talk about it, and you can say, please don't bring this up in conversation. For example, if someone just lost their job, you might not want to bring up finances or money around them because they might feel bad that they're going through a hard time. Or you could say, I know Kelly is looking for a job, so maybe you can bring up that your company is hiring. It just means mention it very informally, very quickly. It doesn't have to be a super serious conversation. They say it's never polite to bring up politics at the dinner table, so don't mention it. Don't talk about it. Another topic we don't often bring up in the United States is someone's age. So we won't ask their age, or we won't talk about how old they are unless they bring it up themselves. This next phrase is really great to use either in a business context or just in your everyday conversations. If you want to say something has been finalized, you can say it sealed the deal. So, for example, you can seal the deal with your opinion. It means you might not have known how you felt about something before. But now your opinion is firm, and you know exactly how you feel. Because it was sealed, the deal was sealed, so you could say, I didn't know how I felt about snow until this winter, but now it really sealed the deal. I don't like it, so maybe the winter was really bad. It was really harsh. Your opinion is now formed. You could say, I think we got the client to agree, we just need to seal the deal by having them sign it. So this would be more literal. You could say the deal isn't finalized or firm until they sign it, even though we think they're going to agree to it. But seal the deal. This next phrase is a little confusing for English learners. When I say someone is giving attitude, it means they're acting rude, or they're saying rude things, or they're being difficult to work with. Now, typically, when we say someone's attitude, it just means the way they act or feel towards another person or towards a thing. So you can have a positive attitude or a negative attitude. When we use this phrase, someone is giving us attitude, it means they have a negative attitude. They're being very difficult. So if you have someone you work with, and you know them quite well, you wouldn't want to say this to your boss, and they're just acting super difficult. they're not doing what you asked them to do, or they're doing it, but they're being very rude. When they respond to you, you might say, "Why are you giving me attitude about this?" It means, why are you acting rude and being difficult? Here's the thing. This next phrase is very important for you to learn. The phrase "here's the thing" just means you're about to say something very important, or you're about to say something that gives justification for something. When we use this phrase "here's the thing," we usually say, "Here's the problem we need to focus on," or "Here's the important piece of information we need to focus on." And it's used all the time in everyday conversation. So maybe you got invited to a friend's party, but you don't have a car, so you won't be able to drive there. And maybe there's no bus that runs at the time of the party. So you could say, "Yeah, I'd love to come to your party. But here's the thing, I don't have a car. And there's no bus running at that time." So you're saying, "Yes, I want to come, but the thing or the problem is your transportation or how you're going to get there." So maybe in this conversation, you solve the problem by saying, "I'll take an Uber or a taxi, or someone can come pick you up." This next phrase is rhetorical, but it's used all the time in everyday conversation. When you start your sentence with "imagine having to," you're asking someone to think about a situation, but you're not literally asking them to imagine it or talk about it. You're just saying, like, "Wow, that would be a difficult situation." So maybe you look at someone who has a large number of children. Maybe they have 5, 6, 7, or even 8 kids. When I see a family like this, I just say to myself, "Imagine having to feed all those kids." It means imagine the amount of food. It's unbelievable. So it can be something very shocking or very terrible. You could say something like, "Imagine having to replace all your belongings after losing your house in a fire." So it's a bad situation, and you're saying, "Imagine having to do that," because you just think it's such a bad situation. You can only imagine it. Have you ever known someone who seems to spend money on their credit card and lives in denial that they're going to have to pay it back at the end of the month? This English phrase, "to live in denial," it means you do something without thinking about the consequences, or you ignore what's going to happen at the end. Sometimes we eat unhealthy food and just kind of live in denial. Like the food isn't unhealthy, we just say, "Oh, it's fine for us, but it might not be good." So when you live in denial, it means you do something and ignore the consequences or the bad outcomes that might result from it. And here's a bonus phrase for you: ignorance is bliss. This phrase says it's good to live in denial, which I don't know if I always agree with. When you have two options that are equally good, you can tell someone, "You can't go wrong with either of these options," or you can just say, "You can't go wrong in general." It means no matter what the person chooses, it's going to be a good choice or a good option. And the first thing that comes to mind for this phrase is ice cream. I love ice cream. There's an American store called Cold Stone, and they have tons of ice cream flavors, maybe 20 or 30 flavors. And honestly, you can't go wrong with any of the flavors, and you can add candy too. So no matter what you choose when you go to Cold Stone, you just can't go wrong. It means every ice cream flavor is really good. There are so many ways in English to say, "We're leaving." One phrase I wanted to teach in this lesson is "we're off." Or if you don't contract the first part of this phrase, you can say, "We are off." If you're working in an office, and your coworker wants to go get lunch with you, you might say, "Let me just finish this email, and then we're off to lunch." It means we will leave as soon as I finish this task. Or if you're in an informal conversation with someone, and you're about to say, "We're leaving now," you'll say, "Okay, yeah, we're off now." It means we're leaving right now. It's a very informal way to say it. One common stereotype about Americans is that we love guns, and the next phrase is "a gun to your head." I don't know if this stereotype is true for everyone. I've heard people who believe this stereotype or this idea, and then they come visit here from another country, always say, "Okay, it's not that big of a deal. You guys don't love guns that much." Okay, so when you use this phrase "a gun to your head," it means you have to make a decision as if there's a gun to your head, like someone's threatening you, even though you don't have time to research, or you don't have time to consider the options much. So you could give someone a weird situation they have to think about, like a "would you rather." You could say, would you rather freeze to death? Or would you rather burn to death? And the person says, I don't know. Both sound terrible. You could say, well, gun to your head, make a decision. It means don't think about it too much, just think about it like I'm threatening you. It's a really weird phrase, but you'll hear it in English conversation. It's very important to be able to use the next phrase in a sentence. When you speak English, the phrase is to the extent of something. Listening, you talk about how far something covers, either in size or the number of people it affects, or how long something will last. So a very simple example is when there's a natural disaster like a hurricane, a tsunami, or a tornado, you might ask, what is the extent of the damage? Or you might say, we were very lucky. And because everyone survived the disaster, but the extent of the damage is that, many homes were damaged. Maybe you're describing to someone the job they have to do for their position. You might say, well, you're responsible for getting the mail. You're responsible for answering emails, and you're responsible for making sure the customers are happy. That's the extent of your job, though. It means that's all you have to do. Your job doesn't go beyond those things I just told you. So the extent is the limit of something. A very common phrase in English is, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. This phrase means if you support everything, your support isn't as important because you don't have those few things you stand for. So you should have really strong morals, and you should have really strong ethics. Now, the phrase I want to teach you is to stand up for someone. So if you stand up for someone, it means you defend them in a situation where they're being bullied, harassed, or people are talking negatively about them. One thing that's important to me in life is to stand up for people who are commonly discriminated against. So people with disabilities, they might not have the accommodations they need, or they might not be able to do everything everyone else does because of their disability, so it's important to stand up for them, help them out, and tell people they need to be included because it's really important to stand up for people who can't always defend themselves, or they can't always advocate for themselves in a situation. Have you ever met someone who talks a big game? The classic example that comes to mind when I think of this phrase is the UFC fighter Conor McGregor. He used to say, I'm going to knock this guy out in the first round. Make his own predictions. He talked a big game. Typically, when someone talks a big game, it means they talk about their abilities or what they're going to do very dramatically, and they won't actually be able to follow through with many of those things. The reason Conor McGregor, got so famous is because he talked a big game and actually did many of the things he promised he would do. So if you talk a big game, you have to back it up. It means your actions need to follow your words. This first phrase I saw on an advertisement, and I thought, wow, this is a great phrase that the meaning isn't obvious. But once you know it, it's very easy to use in your conversations. The phrase is to drop a hint. When someone drops a hint, they give you a little piece of information about something that's going to happen, or something they want, or something they're trying to get you to know. But they don't say it directly and obviously, and rudely. The most common example that comes to mind is that many women who are in relationships will drop hints that they want to get married, that they want to be proposed to, especially in the United States. Traditionally, the man asks the woman to marry him. So women will say, wow, wouldn't it be interesting if we had a wedding or if I had a ring? So these are just little hints that they want to get married, but they're not saying, I want you to propose to me. They're just dropping hints. One of my favorite sporting events to watch on TV is anything from the Olympics. I remember watching the Summer Olympics, and the famous Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt absolutely blew all of the other runners out of the water. This example means he beat them by such a large margin that it wasn't even close. You can use this phrase to blow someone out of the water when you beat someone by a very large margin, or you totally outperform them, or totally defeat them. The competition isn't close. When you blow someone out of the water. After doing a little research, I found this phrase comes from the idea of dropping a bomb into the water. And the boat just blows out of the water because the bomb is so large. Well, we use this phrase in everyday English to mean you beat someone by a large margin. Instead of saying there was bad weather on a road trip, we in the United States say we hit some weather. This phrase seems a little odd. It seems kind of general, but really it just means there was some kind of significant weather. Either a snowstorm or a rainstorm or a tornado, some kind of weather event that came up on the road during your road trip and delayed the trip. This phrase is especially useful in the United States or countries like the United States where the weather can change so quickly. In many parts of the United States, it either snows, or we have tornadoes in the south, or hurricanes near the ocean. There's just so many different types of weather in the United States that this phrase is very useful. So maybe you're driving to somewhere like Texas in the United States, and you might say, "Our trip got delayed because we hit some weather on the road." It could mean there was some kind of storm or tornado that made your trip take longer. Maybe you had to stop driving because the weather was dangerous. So instead of saying, "We had bad weather while driving," you can just say, "We hit some weather." I love this next English idiom. The phrase is to poke the bear. Guys, let me know in the comments if you have a similar phrase in your native language as well, but this idiom comes from the idea that if a bear was sleeping, you could kind of anger it, meaning just disturb it by giving it a little poke. And if you give it a little poke, most times the sleeping bear won't wake up. But if you poke the bear enough, it will wake up. And it's a scary bear that will attack you, maybe, but this phrase just says, don't anger people. Don't disturb them. Because if you poke the bear enough or disturb people enough, they will blow up, or they will do something bad to you, or they will retaliate. This phrase is also used in the news. If there's a country that's very powerful, and people are doing things politically to disturb that country that it doesn't like, they're being negative towards the bigger country, people might say they're poking the bear to start a war. This next phrase is obviously used very informally, but actually, I use this phrase all the time, and my 4-year-old son finds it hilarious when I have a moment where I make a mistake just because I have too much going on in my brain, or I just make a mistake about something that normally would be very simple. Usually, I say, "Oh, sorry, I had a brain fart." Okay, so the other day, I gave my son the cup that belonged to his brother, and they're very particular about who gets which cup. And my son said, "Hey, this isn't mine, it's brother's." And I said, "Oh, sorry, I had a brain fart." It just means I momentarily forgot. I had a short moment where my brain wasn't working. It's like a fart. An interesting thing about the next phrase is that many Americans actually say the wrong word for this phrase. The phrase is brass tacks, like the sharp push pins, but many Americans hear this as brass tacks, like the fee the government charges you. I had to do a little research on where this phrase brass tacks came from, and it comes from the old trade of making men's suits. To accurately measure the fabric that would be used for the suits, the people who made the suits would put down brass tacks, sharp push pins, and that was the most accurate measurement they could get. So this phrase in English is used to say, let's start talking about the important details, the most specific details. So maybe if you go into a business meeting, you'll start with small talk, how's your day, how's the weather, things like that. And then when you want to start talking about money or the very important things in the meeting, you might say, okay, let's get down to brass tacks now. So get down to brass tacks means start talking about the important details of whatever our conversation is about. This next phrase is a compliment. It's a compliment I've heard in my life, but I think it sounds very strange the first time you're learning English. The phrase is "you're so smiley." Describing someone as smiley might seem obvious, it just means they smile a lot. Maybe your friend has a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend, and they're just smiling all the time. You could say, "You're so smiley," or "so smiley lately." It just means you're very happy. But obviously, you're happy because you're smiling a lot. A very important phrase in English is give or take. If you give someone an estimate number, it means you're kind of guessing. It's not exactly accurate. You'll say, it's about 6, give or take, for example. So it could be 5, it could be 4, it could be 7, it could be 8. It's just kind of an estimate. You can also ask someone for an estimate by saying, how many do you think, give or take? Maybe you're having a party, and you're not sure exactly how many guests you'll have. So in your head, you might say, I think I need 5 pizzas, give or take. It means you could order an extra pizza for your party guests, or you could probably just stick with 5, or maybe even 4 would be okay. You're just giving an estimate by saying give or take, or you're asking for an estimate. If you say, how many, give or take. Some of my English students come to me and say, I've tried learning English in every way possible. I just can't seem to remember all these phrases. Well, here's a phrase you could use instead of saying all those words. You could say, I've tried every trick in the book to learn English. It means you've tried every option available to you. So if you've tried every trick in the book to do something, usually you're trying to achieve a goal or trying to complete a task that's usually very difficult, and you've used every strategy available. Another way this phrase is used, let's say we have a child who needs to take medicine. Kids usually don't like taking medicine because it doesn't taste good to them. So we try every trick in the book to make it taste good and make it easier for them to take. So I could give my child ice cream if they eat their medicine. Or I could say, I'll mix your medicine with juice. I've tried every trick in the book, and usually, one of the tricks works. But sometimes you might try every trick in the book, and you just can't figure out how to get the kid to take the medicine. This next phrase is super useful, so pay close attention. When you want to say someone has the start of a really good idea, or they've achieved something really good, and they should take it further, you can say, you're onto something. I think about the company Apple. They created the iPhone, and they realized people really like having all these apps on their phone that can do different things, like a calculator, texting, you can even use maps on your phone. They really figured out they were onto something. And now, of course, today we have thousands and thousands, maybe even more, apps we can download onto our phone to do different things. I mean, people even, connect to the cameras in their house from their phone. They were really onto something in the early days of creating the iPhone. And now our iPhones are like our whole life. So when you use this phrase, you're onto something, you say this to someone to make sure they know they have a good idea, and they should take it even further. This next phrase is very simple but used in a couple of different ways. If you want to say something happens again and again, it's very predictable, or you can say, you achieved results by working hard. You can say, once again, we worked hard and achieved our goal. This is a really common way to start a sentence, or you can use it negatively. If you're annoyed at someone for constantly oversleeping, you might say, once again, you slept through your alarm and were late. You just use this phrase to emphasize someone keeps doing the same thing over and over. Once again. This next phrase is also very simple but used extremely often in English, especially in formal English conversation. The phrase is the fact that. So we usually start our sentences with this when we're annoyed about something or frustrated about something. Going back to my last example, you could say, the fact that you overslept again. It really means you don't care about your job, so your emphasis is the fact or the thing that happened to prove your point. You can also use this phrase positively too. You could say about someone, the fact that they donated so much money to charity really shows they're good people. So it's just one thing proving another thing. You start your sentence saying the fact that. Instead of saying you contribute money or invest money in something, you can say you put up money for something. So, to put up money for something means to invest or contribute. For example, you could say, I put up money for you to go to college, and you're just wasting your time. It means you invested your money in a friend or family member to go to college. Maybe help them out by giving them some money for tuition, and now they're just wasting their time. A very common phrase we use in our everyday conversations and a phrase that's very common in literature as well, meaning books and different types of writing, is little did I know, or little did he know, or little did she know, whoever it is. So this just indicates that something that seems minor or just not very important is about to become very important to that person. A funny story that has this phrase is when I was in college, I met my husband, and I'm sure he just thought, some girl who liked him. But now, little did he know I would become his wife, and we would have a family someday. So it's just funny when something that seems minor or maybe not that important becomes very important later on. If you want to say you have a very strong and firm belief about something, and you will always define yourself by this belief, you can say, I always have and I always will. For example, let's say you're a very hardworking person, and you think hard work is one of the most important qualities you can have, and someone says, "Wow, you're very hardworking." You might say, "I always have been, and I always will be." It just indicates you believe very strongly in this. Or you could use this negatively to describe someone. You could say, "He's always been a liar, and he always will be." So the phrases always have and always will. Instead of saying you're waiting for some kind of permission from authority for something you're going to do, what you're going to do, you can say you're waiting on the go-ahead. This phrase is very common in conversation. You can use it more formally and informally, but it just means you're waiting for the green light, which would mean the approval for your actions. A common scenario where you might use this phrase: let's say you're a construction worker, and you're ready to build a house. All the plans are ready, they're just waiting for approval from whoever is paying for the building to be built. So you could say, "Our plans are ready. We're just waiting on the go-ahead from the people who bought this building," so you're waiting for approval from the authority figure on the project. This next word is used very often in English. The word is naturally. Very often, we say something happens naturally. For example, you might say, "There aren't many naturally occurring fruit trees in the United States." It means trees with fruit don't just often grow in the United States. People have to plant them, so they're man-planted, but they don't occur naturally. It means from the earth without intervention. Now we also use this word in conversation quite often to mean something is obvious. So naturally. I would be very excited to win $1 million. Or you could use it negatively to say, naturally, you're going to be disappointed if you don't get the job. It means don't worry about how you feel because it's so natural, it's what we would expect, so it's obvious or expected. When you add the word naturally, and you'll hear native English speakers in the United States use this word in their sentences quite often. Naturally, we'll say naturally all the time. This phrase to trash someone is used so often now, especially by younger people in the United States. It's more of a slang phrase, but it's very common now. Trashing someone means talking very negatively about someone or insulting them, especially if we're talking behind their back or not to their face. In the United States, it's totally fine to trash politicians because we have such freedom of speech here. You can't really get in trouble for speaking negatively about people in power, whereas I know this isn't common everywhere in the world, but here it's very common to trash politicians or talk very negatively or insult them. Even a funny phrase that's actually used quite often in English is the phrase "dry as a bone." If you want to say something just has no water or nothing left, you might say it's dry as a bone. For example, right now where I live, there hasn't been much rain, so the grass in my yard is turning brown. It's really dry as a bone. It means there's no water. Or you could say, "Can I have a sip of your drink?" And someone might say, "Sorry, it's dry as a bone." It means there's no water or liquid left in it. It's a really funny phrase, but it's used quite often. When we want to say something is very normal and we always do it, we might say it's routine. For example, when you go to the doctor in the United States, they ask you so many different questions about your health, and they'll even ask you, "Have you had cancer? Do you have heart problems?" And you might ask, "Why do you need all this information?" The doctor will say, "Well, it's just routine that we ask these questions just in case." It means it's totally normal. We do this for everyone. It's routine. Or if you go to the airport in the United States, of course, we have very, very strict airport security. It's called TSA, and you have to go through it. You have to take off your shoes, you have to take off your belt. You put your bag through an X-ray machine, and you might ask, "Why do we need to do all this?" And we usually just say, "Well, it's just routine. Everyone has to do it." It means it's usual. It's totally normal. It's what the norm is. It's routine. In English, when someone makes a mistake and they're a little worried about it, but you want to assure them that there's no penalty for their mistake. Nothing bad happened to anyone because of their mistake, it's just not a big deal. You can use the phrase "no harm, no foul." It just means no harm was done. It means no one was hurt, so there's no foul or penalty. Usually, this word foul means a penalty in soccer or basketball or whatever sport you're talking about, but we can use it in this phrase too. Let's say you were going to a meeting, and you got the time of the meeting wrong. You showed up an hour early, and the person you're meeting with says, "Oh, sorry, you're early." And you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I totally got confused." And they'll say, "Well, I actually have time right now." No harm, no foul. It means there's no penalty for you being early. Even though you made this mistake, there's no foul because nothing bad happened. So if you want to just tell someone their mistake is minor, it didn't hurt anyone, they won't be penalized. Use the phrase, no harm, no foul. Speaking of the word foul, this next phrase is foul play. This phrase is important to know, especially if you like watching crime shows, because often when someone dies or gets injured, the police will say no foul play was suspected. It's suspected the person was maybe sick or died of natural causes, or just an accident happened that wasn't caused by someone else. But if foul play was suspected, it means they think someone else committed this crime. Now you can use this in less serious situations too. Again, if you're at work, and someone made a mistake, but you don't think the mistake was done to intentionally hurt you or intentionally hurt your company, you might say, "Well, there was no foul play involved." It means it was just an accident. A great phrase you can use to give a compliment, especially in English, is to say something was well deserved. So when someone wins an award, or if someone gets a pay raise, you can say it was really well deserved. It means you think they worked so hard that they especially deserve the award or the praise or the amount of money they were given. Or someone might say, "Well, I just feel so lucky to have the job I have now." You might say, "Well, it's very well deserved. You studied really hard in school and got good grades." So to say something is well deserved means the person earned it and worked very hard. Okay, I'm really sorry to say this, but often English learners, when they start speaking English, will say, "I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy." They will overuse this phrase, especially if they want to show they're happy and friendly. And maybe you're more advanced, and you don't use this phrase too often anymore, but a good phrase you can add to your vocabulary is, "This brought me so much joy." Native English speakers will use this phrase when they want to say something was very, very joyful or made them very happy, but it's just a nice alternative phrase to use instead of "I'm so happy." Right now, the new Spider-Man movie is out. It's bringing so many people so much joy. I've heard it's really good. I want to go see it soon. Or if something very simple makes you very happy, you could say, "Wow, this ice cream just brought me so much joy today." It means a small thing just made me very happy, it brought me joy. This next phrase is very common, and it's also very funny. Be sure to remember it if you want to say someone betrayed you or someone blamed you for something, and they didn't even try to hide it. You can say they threw you under the bus. This idiom is very common. The example that comes to mind for this idiom is, "One time, my kids were eating a bunch of candy, and I asked, 'Who let you eat all this candy? It's too much candy.' They said, 'Well, Dad gave it to us.' They totally threw their dad under the bus. So instead of, thanking Dad for giving them candy but, not helping Mom out, they just threw him under the bus, they blamed him immediately." A very interesting phrase in English. It led me to believe. This phrase is used very specifically when, you see something happen quite often. So it leads you to believe, or it makes you think that something is the norm, or it makes you think something will always happen because you see it so often. When I was a kid, which I think is very common for many kids, you see movies where people, adults, drive nice cars, they have lots of money, they have all this freedom. So it led me to believe that being an adult is very fun. And it's very cool. But really, while being an adult is sometimes fun, you have to work very hard when you're an adult to pay for things like nice cars, nice houses, vacations, things like that. So don't lead your kids to believe everything comes easy. You have to teach them there's lots of hard work involved in being an adult too. This next phrase makes me think of a time I was at the mall with my husband. At the mall, there are these things called kiosks. They're not stores, but they're little stands in the middle of the mall floor where people try to sell you products. So maybe they'll say, "Oh, look at this. This is an amazing cleaning product. And it's not something normally sold everywhere." So you're kind of intrigued, and you look at it, and often these people will be very, very aggressive trying to sell you something. One time, my husband almost got suckered into buying some kind of face cream from one of these kiosks. And I kept saying, "Come on, we have to go. We're not going to buy this right now." The person selling it wanted a lot of money for this face cream I had never even heard of, and they were trying to suck us into buying this because they were, saying, "Oh, we'll have all these great results, this face cream is amazing." And I just, honestly, wasn't really buying it. And my husband's like, "I don't know, this guy seems really nice. He seems really honest." And I said, "Come on, let's not get suckered into buying this." So you might have heard two phrases I heard telling that story: to get sucked into something and to get suckered into something. Both of these phrases are pretty much used the same way. I would say to get suckered into is a little bit harsher because you're calling yourself a sucker or insulting your own intelligence. If you say you got sucked into something or suckered into doing something, it means you were kind of tricked into doing it or buying it, even though you usually have better judgment. So when salespeople are very aggressive, it's important not to get suckered into buying something you can't afford or don't need. A very common phrase you can use when you're about to do something that's either difficult or, a little scary at first. You can say, "I'm about to brave." This phrase is very common when you're about to go somewhere very crowded. You might say, "I'm about to brave the crowd." It means even though I know this place is going to be very crowded, and there will be lots of people, and lots of waiting, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to go there anyway. Or if there's a bad storm outside, you might say, "I'm going to brave the storm." It means even though the storm might make it difficult to drive or go somewhere, I want to be brave, and I'm just going to go out and face it. If you like Adam Sandler movies, you might know this phrase because it's the title of a movie he did with Jennifer Aniston. This movie is very weird, but it was quite popular, and the phrase is "just go with it." The plot of this movie called Just Go With It is that he takes his family on a trip to kind of impress a woman. It's a really weird movie, but basically, Jennifer Aniston and these two kids have to pretend to be Adam Sandler's family. And to make the lie work, the phrase they use over and over is "just go with it," just pretend everything is real. Even though it's a very weird situation. So if you're about to tell a lie, and you want someone to play along with your lie or kind of help you convince people of the lie, you might say, "Let's just go with it. Just agree with whatever I say." It means just accept it and act like it's normal. You can also use this phrase when someone gives you the wrong item, but you think it's fine, you can accept it. You might say, "I'll just go with it. It's okay." For example, if you say, "Hey, can I have a Diet Pepsi or a Diet Coke?" and they give you a regular Pepsi or regular Coke and say, "Oh, sorry, we only have regular, is that okay?" And you might say, "Yeah, I'll just go with it. It's fine." It means I'll accept it, even though it's not exactly what I wanted or asked for. Just go with it. This next one is kind of a phrasal verb, but it's very common in English. So I want to go over a couple of ways we use pop up. When you say something pops up, it means it appears unexpectedly. You might talk about something literally popping up. It comes into your vision. I was at a haunted house, and suddenly someone in a costume popped up at me. It means they jumped out. You didn't see them before, but now you do. Or you could say, "My schedule today was very open, but suddenly a lot of meetings popped up." It means you didn't expect to have many meetings on your schedule, but now they appeared on your schedule unexpectedly. One phrase I heard recently that I think is very useful for you too is when someone wants to recommend something very strongly, they might say, "I can't recommend it enough." Again, the new Spider-Man movie is out, and someone told me recently, "You should go see it, I can't recommend it enough." They really loved the movie. They thought it was really good. So I'm going to go see Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. Do you want to speak English fluently? So in today's lesson, we're going to listen to a conversation so you can learn 10 phrases that will help you sound like a fluent English speaker. Let's listen to our conversation between Sheila and Maggie and learn these phrases. I need to get something off of my chest. Maggie. This purse, it's fake. So in this conversation, Sheila needs to get it off her chest that the purse is fake. We call these counterfeit bags or counterfeit purses, and often people don't have the real designer things, they have a fake one. And you might confess this to your friend if you feel a little guilty about it, you feel like you're lying. You just need to get it off your chest. I'll keep it on the down low. Don't worry. When you want to say you're going to help keep a secret, and you're not going to tell many people, and you're not going to spread the information around, you can say you're going to keep something on the down low. Just be aware this phrase is definitely a slang phrase, but it's so common here in the United States when we speak English. I was so stoked when you texted me to meet up today. A great way to say you're excited about something is to say you are stoked. I think of a campfire when you stoke it. It means when you move the coals and the wood around, the fire usually gets bigger. So it's like it's excited. When you're stoked, it means you're very excited. By the way, I'm so stoked you're watching today's English lesson. I hope you learn these phrases, and I hope you subscribe to the channel to learn more and comment your favorite phrase from this video. Now let's continue the lesson. Oh, I know, we haven't seen each other in forever. This is surreal finally living in the same city after all these years. So this phrase, it's surreal in English. It's a very German phrase. It means something feels like a fantasy or a dream. It feels like it's not real. It's surreal. But we use this in English to say things are just very good. Like, we can't believe it's happening. You'll hear this phrase quite often. So in this conversation, Maggie is so excited about living near Sheila. She says it feels like a dream. It's surreal. Oh, sorry, I'm so clumsy. You need to know what clumsy means in English, someone who is clumsy, like me. They have a lot of accidents. They trip, they fall, they knock over drinks. I'm famous for spilling my coffee. And I mean spilling the entire coffee all over the floor. I don't know how it happens, but I'm just very clumsy. Are you clumsy? Let me know in the comments because we have that in common if you are. So if you want to describe someone who has a lot of accidents, and sometimes it's not necessarily rude, like, oh, you're so clumsy. But it can be rude. It can be like, why aren't you more careful? You're so clumsy. So be careful with this adjective. But it's really useful. Let's just say you're prone to accidents or making a lot of kind of mistakes. So I had to tell my friend her boyfriend was cheating on her, and she got so mad at me. But the truth hurts. If you say the truth hurts, it means it's important to know the truth. But the truth is bad, so it hurts. So in this conversation, we're talking about someone having a cheating boyfriend. That would be so terrible. But you need to know if you're the girlfriend in this situation, even though the truth hurts, it's very honest and very bad. So when we have a situation like this in English, we say the truth hurts. Well, I'll tell you what, Maggie. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. This phrase is very common in conversational English, but some people consider the word damn a curse word or kind of inappropriate language. So just be careful who you use this phrase around. If you say you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, it means no matter if you take the action, you're going to be judged for it, and you're going to make someone unhappy. So in this conversation, Maggie feels so bad about telling her other friend her boyfriend cheated, but if she doesn't tell her friend, it's not very honest, and it would be almost more hurtful to her friend. So either way, she's hurting her friend's feelings. She's damned if she tells her friend, and she's damned if she doesn't tell her friend. So usually in English, we say this phrase, we say, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. La 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 sorry. I just can't get this song out of my head. If you want to say you have something playing over and over in your brain, and you can't stop thinking about it. Especially if you're thinking about a song, you can say you can't get it out of your head. Another phrase that means the same thing is to say it's stuck in your head. Sometimes if something really embarrassing happens to me, I just can't get it out of my head. I can't stop thinking about how embarrassing it was. But more often, we say, I can't get this song out of my head. Like in this conversation, my son, he plays these video games, and I constantly hear him raging, and I hear him even just rage quit at the end of the game. When we want to say someone is very, very angry, we can say they have rage. Rage means extreme anger. In English, this word rage has also become a verb, she raged on him. It means she got very angry, yelled, and said hurtful things to the person. So often in video games, especially when men play video games, they will rage and take out their rage on the video game. They'll say, oh, like, why am I losing, and things like that. And I've even heard people say they rage quit, meaning they got so angry they just quit the video game, turned off the machine. So I had to teach you this word because it's very useful in English and very common. I'm just so drained after that game of Scrabble. I gotta hit the road. A good way to say you're tired in English is to say you are drained, your energy. You have none left, so it drained out, just like you would drain water from a pot. If you pour the water out, it's empty, you say it's drained. I'm draining it. If you say my energy is drained or I just feel drained, it means you're tired and have no energy left.